Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, let's check in with the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Right now, as of this taping, the jury is entering its fourth day of deliberations and have asked the judge for numerous items to help make their decision. And on Monday, the jury requested different colored Post-it notes, highlighters, and a white paper board. They also requested transcripts from two of the witnesses and clarification of the word enticement. The two witness transcripts the jury requested were from a prosecution witness given the pseudonym Matt, who was the boyfriend of a former Epstein accuser, and they requested transcripts from former Palm Beach police officer Gregory Parkinson, who testified about a search of Jeffrey Epstein's Florida mansion that occurred in 2005. Now, the fact that the jury has asked for these various items, transcripts, and definitions, and the fact they're taking several days to decide means this is not an open and shut case. They clearly don't think Ghislaine Maxwell is obviously innocent, or they would have come back right away with a not guilty charge. And they also clearly don't think she's obviously guilty, or again, the verdict would have been swift. Instead, the fact they're taking their time discussing and even needing to highlight and write things down on a whiteboard means they're either debating or unsure. Now, Ghislaine has been charged with 6 crimes. Because there are 6 different crimes, the jury has to decide on each and every one of them separately, which could also be what's taking them so long. They may find her guilty on 1 or 2 of the charges and not guilty on the others. They could find her guilty of all the charges or not guilty of anything. It's likely with this many charges, though, that Maxwell will be found guilty of at least something. Now, the jury specifically asked for clarification of the word enticement, and that word appears in 2 of the charges against Maxwell: conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, and enticement of a minor to travel to engage in illegal sex acts. So basically plotting to enticing teens and then actually enticing them into it. The jury wants more clarification on what the law determines to be considered enticement. Is it simply inviting someone, or does there have to be more of an element of persuasion or allurement to it? So just a refresher on the other charges Maxwell faces are conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, enticement of a minor to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, conspiracy to transport minors with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, transportation of a minor with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, sex trafficking conspiracy, and sex trafficking of a minor. So why is Matt and the former police officer's testimony important? Well, Matt is the former boyfriend of an Epstein accuser who testified in the Maxwell trial under the pseudonym Jane. Now, Jane is a soap opera actress, a career the defense used against her. They attempted to make the case that acting dramatic wasn't difficult for her. Her former longtime boyfriend, who's also a soap opera star, testified that while he was dating Jane, she talked about receiving money from a godfather type who kept her family afloat after her dad died and mother went broke. And he said Jane told him the money wasn't free. And when asked what she meant by that, she said it wasn't pretty. She also mentioned to Matt a woman at Epstein's who made her comfortable despite everything going on there. And she later identified that woman to be Ghislaine. Now, what the jury finds particularly interesting about Matt's testimony is unclear, but perhaps it was how Jane described Ghislaine. Was she an active accomplice or a bystander? The other testimony of interest is the Palm Beach police officer Gregory Parkinson. During his testimony, Gregory narrated a video he recorded while executing a search warrant of Epstein's Florida mansion. And the video shows a 2-decade-old photo of Epstein and Maxwell with Pope John Paul at the Vatican. It's understood the two flew by private jet for a private meeting with the Pope. There's also photos of Epstein with Fidel Castro and other powerful figures from the Royal Palace and the White House. The evidence points to the level of influence Epstein somehow managed to wield on the world stage. And again, not sure what the jury finds valuable in rereading this particular testimony, besides the fact that I'm sure it sounds fascinating. So this is where we are currently with the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Again, as of this taping, we could get a verdict any moment now. We do have to wait with bated breath in the meantime while the jury pours through everything they heard and saw to determine whether or not they think Ghislaine Maxwell was a co-conspirator with Epstein in this massive sex scandal. There really weren't any large bombshells or revelations during the trial that came from either the prosecution or the defense. So we're going to see. Everything was pretty lackluster in this trial, unfortunately. A lot of us were hoping for more, and it didn't result in those bombshell discoveries and accusations of the powerful elite that we were hoping for. So the defense, the prosecution, they've rested their cases. They've made their closing arguments. We're waiting on the jury. So what do you think? 6 charges. Do you think she's going to come back guilty? All of them? Some of them? None of them? What do you think we're waiting on?
6 charges that all sound like the same thing, right? As you're reading them,
Similar,
you can barely... And again, and I'm not going to bat for Maxwell, but this is something prosecutors do, right? They can charge you with, you committed one crime, but it's somehow 6 different crimes, and so then they'll get you on one, even if they can't get you on.
Right.
So it's a little bit of, I don't know.
Although she allegedly committed dozens,
many crimes. No, not right.
No, I know what your point. I know,
and that's right. So
I know what you're saying. So aside,
she's going to be convicted, I think. But
and aside from what we think will happen, I'm curious what you guys want to happen, because we got, as Kim said, we got no bombshells out of this. We got no new revelations out of this. That does appear to have been the goal of since Epstein was brought down, to figure out ways to contain this mushrooming scandal that was kind of enveloping the entire global elite, or elements of the entire global elite. Now, in order for there to be any revelations, it seems like we would need to get them from Maxwell. And maybe the only way to get them from Maxwell is if she's not in prison.
Or if she agrees to name names in exchange for a lesser sentence, right? That's why they're trying to throw it? I mean, I think they're just throwing everything at her because, they can hold someone accountable other than Epstein. Maybe she's not a danger. Maybe she doesn't actually know things the way Epstein.
And she doesn't have the proof anymore.
She doesn't have the proof.
They confiscated in their searches all of the different.
I don't think she really has anything to offer them.
Right.
And so they can just, they're going to give her. They're going to really throw the book at her, and not to say she doesn't deserve it, but because they can't hold Epstein accountable, and because she poses no danger, she's going to get, the vengeance that was intended for him. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us think that Ghislaine Maxwell was actually the brain of the operation, that she was actually the one who was controlling everything and facilitating everything and introducing everyone and making all the connections and whatnot. But, she's not giving up anything. So whether or not it's they didn't try, they didn't want to offer her anything in exchange for all the big names, or she just wasn't willing to give it no matter what. But, we don't know. We just know that it didn't happen. And I think you're right, Robbie. They did, prosecution definitely does this all the time. They throw every charge they can possibly find at somebody, hoping one of them will stick. I definitely believe from all the evidence I've seen, from the testimony, I do believe she's guilty as a co-conspirator with Epstein, of roping these girls into these scandals. And so I do think she deserves prison time. I would just like to see more names. I think all of us wanted to see more heads rolling on this. I mean, they were involved with so many different powerful people. These women were claiming that when they were girls, they were being pimped out to all of these powerful men. Where are those powerful men? Why are we not seeing any accountability? And that is the biggest problem so many of us are having with this case.
Right. What she did, destroyed the lives of dozens, scores of people, maybe more than, we know about scores. It may be a lot more than that because of how long that this went on. But she didn't do it alone. And Epstein wasn't her only accomplice. The most powerful people in the world knew what was going on. They were benefiting from it. So it's not just that they turned a blind eye. They were actively benefiting from it. And so they're all going to walk. They're going to skate while she goes to prison.
We don't even know exactly who they are, right? It's a very...
some of the days, but yes, we'd like to know more of the days and precisely what they did. Right. It's
Ghislaine has...
And Prince Andrew's such an easy one to lop off for the elite establishment, for the power structure, because he's just some royal rogue renegade who you can just kind of be like, all right, trim that branch.
Yeah, he has no real power.
Right.
He has no power. Neither does really the royal family. So it's not a lot of, he's easy to kind of make a fall guy, okay, we'll give this one up. But there were a lot of other powerful figures that were involved, and we're not getting any names. And I think that's why a lot of us are suspicious that Ghislaine was actually the brain, because she's the one not talking, right? Like Epstein was maybe one that might have had some loose lips. And so they had to tie up some loose ends, no pun intended. But with Ghislaine, it was I think she's keeping mum. And we're not getting anything out of this, and she probably will serve some prison time. I just don't know how much.
How
Hopefully
did they
more.
meet with the Pope? Was that after he had already been in prison once, or been convicted once?
It was 2 decades ago, so probably prior to.
So it was before that.
his,
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoever clears the Pope's schedule should probably check if you're meeting with any convicted sex offenders. But
yeah.
Then the Pope can't
But I mean,
hold
just
meetings.
imagine. Well, and imagine jeez. Anyway, all right, guys.
oh boy,
Too soon.
that was a good one. All right, well,
We'll have more rising coming up after this.
indeed.